All right, when you think about the birth of rock and roll, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably that driving beat, right? Or that rebellious electric guitar sound. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the official story, the one in the history books, and uncover the real origins of one of the most influential genres ever. So, who do you see in your mind's eye? Elvis, maybe? Chuck Berry? Johnny Cash? Yeah, for decades, those are the names we've all associated with this revolutionary music. But what if I told you the real story starts way, way before any of them?
See, the official story isn't just missing a few pieces. It's like it actively ignored the single most important architect of the entire sound. The person who literally laid the foundation was, for decades, just written out of the story completely.
Okay, so let's talk about that origin myth, the one we all know. We picture the big icons, right? Elvis the pelvis, the king. Chuck Berry, the father. These are the legends we're told created this world-changing sound back in the 50s. But here's the thing. That's the myth. The truth? The actual blueprint for rock and roll was already there, fully formed, more than a decade before any of those guys even hit the charts. And the person who pioneered it? A queer, black woman from Arkansas. So let's meet her. Her name is Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and she is the true godmother of rock and roll. And her story? It doesn't start in some smoky bar or a fancy recording studio. It starts in church. Rosetta grew up in the Church of God in Christ, COGIC for short. Now, you gotta understand, this was not your quiet, solemn Sunday service. The COGIC tradition was, well, it was radical. It was all about loud, rhythmic music, ecstatic dancing. They didn't see any difference between a sacred feeling and a secular beat. It was pretty much the perfect incubator for a sound that would change everything. And Rosetta herself, she was a prodigy. I mean, born in 1915, and she was already a master of the guitar by age 4. Insane, right? As part of the Great Migration, she ended up moving from the rural Delta all the way to Chicago, and that's where she started mixing that raw, emotional blues with the high-energy vibe of urban gospel. So with this incredible mix of influences, she didn't just, join the music scene. She basically created a brand new one. And the best part, we have the recording to prove it. This is it. The song is called Strange Things Happening Every Day, and it was recorded in 1944. Let that sink in. 1944. That's a full decade before Elvis's first hit. And yeah, tons of music historians point to this exact track as the first real rock and roll record ever. And this is where it gets really cool. You can see just how revolutionary this was. I mean, think about it. At the time, popular music was all about these clean jazz guitar tones and polished big band swing. And here comes Rosetta, hitting her electric guitar with heavy distortion. She lays down this driving boogie-woogie rhythm, and then she just unleashes this wild, improvised guitar solo. Nobody was doing that back then. This wasn't just gospel music anymore. This was gospel music that made you want to get up and move. And get this, it wasn't just some weird, innovative thing that nobody heard. It was a smash hit. The song was a massive crossover success. In 1945, it became the very first gospel record to ever cross over and land on Billboard's Race Records chart. And it didn't just scrape by, it hit the number 2 spot. That proved her sound had this huge appeal, way beyond the church wall. Just like that, with one song, she completely flipped the script on what the electric guitar could be. It wasn't just some background rhythm instrument anymore. Nope. It was the star of the show. It was the voice of pure celebration, pure energy, and yeah, pure rebellion. So, what about those future kings of rock and roll? Oh, they were listening. You better believe they were paying close attention. And the influence here isn't subtle. We're talking direct lines from her to the guys who would become legends. And the crazy part is, they even admitted it themselves. And it wasn't just her sound they were picking up on. It was even her stage presence. We've all seen Chuck Berry's famous duck walk, right? It's iconic. But years before he ever did that, Sister Rosetta was blowing audiences away with her own version. This kind of rhythmic stoop she did while absolutely shredding on her Gibson. And look, if you have even a shred of doubt, just listen to the man himself. Chuck Berry famously said his entire career was, and I quote, one long Sister Rosetta Tharpe impersonation. Wow.
That's not just influence, that's a straight-up admission from the guy they call the father of rock and roll about who the real architect was.
I mean, her reach was just staggering. You've got a young Elvis Presley listening to her gospel show on the radio every single day. His famous backup singers, the Jordanaires, yeah, they got their start touring with her. She discovered Little Richard when he was just 14 and gave him his first professional gig. And it doesn't stop there. Years later, a TV performance of hers, filmed in a rainy Manchester train station of all places, inspired a whole generation of British guitar gods. We're talking Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Keith Richards. That performance basically helped kick off the British invasion. Okay, so this is the big question, right? If she was so foundational, so incredibly influential, why isn't her name as famous as Elvis or Chuck Berry? How did she get, well, erased from the story for so long? Well, the reasons are a painful mix of prejudices. For one, the music industry just found it way easier to market rock and roll as a white masculine invention. Then you have the reality of being a black woman touring in the Jim Crow South. She was barred from hotels. She often had to sleep on her tour bus or even in funeral parlors. And on top of all that, she was navigating her life as a queer woman in a relationship with her partner Marie Knight, which was kind of an open secret in the pretty conservative gospel world. She was breaking every single rule there was. And being written out of the story like that, it had devastating consequences for her legacy. When she passed away in 1973, she was buried in an unmarked grave. And she stayed that way for 35 years. It really wasn't until a biography came out in 2007 that people started to reevaluate her work, and the world started to remember. A headstone was finally placed on her grave in 2009, and then, finally, in 2018, she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It took a long time. So today, her legacy is finally being reclaimed. You can hear her musical DNA everywhere, from the mind-blowing guitar skills of Jimi Hendrix all the way to the genre-smashing power of artists like Lizzo today. She is, without a doubt, the original soul sister, the architect, the godmother. Sister Rosetta Tharpe's story is incredible, but it also shows us just how easily these huge foundational figures can be, well, just written out of history. It's a powerful reminder that behind every great cultural movement, there are pioneers whose names we might not know. And that leaves us with a really important question, doesn't it? Whose story have we yet to hear?